It is. It is about half an hour past midnight. I just got home from work. I open up my fridge, and the only thing I have is beer and milk. And I'm not recording while drinking, so I got some milk. Night Rain is the culmination of Dark Souls roguelite. You take the Dark Souls combat of methodical, learning the boss fight, rolling at the right time, learning all your timings, when you can get hits, when you can't, and then it throws into a roguelite where you run around, you have to pick up weapons, you have to fight certain enemies, and all the enemies are randomized, the weapons are randomized, the bosses are randomized, your loot is all randomized, so every run feels a bit different. Then they throw in multiplayer, so that way all the enemies different, but so are your teammates, so every run can feel pretty unique. The one thing that Night Rain did that I really enjoyed as well was the fact that it added characters. Like pre-made characters that you play as. These characters were not custom made. You didn't really get to customize them as you went through your game and slowly build this character through each and every trial you face over dozens, maybe hundreds of hours. Instead, you're given a predetermined character, thrown into a world for an hour, survive, thrive, or die. Now, these predefined characters all have their own backstories, they all have their own little personalities, and they all have their kits, their weaponry that they're good with. Wylder has a handful of tools to his disposal. One, he really likes swords, great swords, pretty big swords that can still be used as swords. I don't count colossal swords as swords because they're just hunks of raw iron that you swing around. Wylder's also good with fire. Fire is kind of a big deal in Dark Souls. And then he's basically the protagonist. He's as close to a protagonist as you can get in a game like this. Swords are a big deal in Dark Souls games. Not just because they're like the default weaponry you think of when you think of medieval fantasy, but also because the entire Dark Souls brand was really built on a sword. The most iconic part of Dark Souls was the bonfire. Dark Souls was a slow slug of a game where everything is battering down on you and you're slowly making your way forward. And you're not even sure if you're actually making your way forward because you don't know where you are and it's really easy to get lost. But you knew you were making progress when you found the bonfire, a pile of bones with a sword stuck in the middle of it in flames. If you saw that, it was home. It would heal you to full. It would reset the world. You'd sit down at it. It'd let you level up, sort through your equipment, repair anything. It was great. It was home. And that icon of the sword stuck into the fiery bones is what gave Dark Souls such iconic energy. While it uses swords, Dark Souls really relied off of the sword. Then there's fire. Fire is central to Dark Souls, to FromSoft as a whole, really. As I mentioned, the legendary bonfire, that was bones on fire with a fiery sword in the middle of it. The whole Dark Souls games opens up with the advent of flame being such a big deal, where everything's dark and depressing, and then fire. Not only does Dark Souls have the bonfire, but the entire concept of the game is you repeating the cycle of sacrificing yourself to fire, just as the first Lord did in his time. Sacrificing yourself to the fire to keep the cycle going, to keep the world bright and good. But that's part of the point, is it's centered around sacrificing yourself to fire. Elden Ring, the game world that this game is a spin-off of, another FromSoft property, one of the core components in the plot is you getting a certain flame so you can burn down the old order and create a new order. So fire is pretty central there too. And then in Sekiro, one of the primary antagonists is fire. Or at least they use fire. It's a clan that come in and burn down your home and then you fight them. While it's not fire being used on your side, it's still a good indication that fire is central to the story. Even Armored Core, game that has nothing to do with the fantasy settings of Sekiro, Elden Ring, and Dark Souls. Armored Core, where you run around with giant mechs, they even brought fire into the central core of that series with Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. But with all this fire in the bloodstream of FromSoft games, it's no coincidence that Wylder, the man who is known to represent Dark Souls and FromSoft as a whole, so much that the community gives him a title of John Dark Souls as an over-encompassing figure, uses fire as his ultimate attack. It's a big fiery explosion. And he's the only character that does this, by the way. None of the other characters have, like, fire-based attacks by default. Wylder's the only one that does that. He's a linchpin there. He stands out as fire dude. I don't even think the other characters have anything to do with fire, like, as a character. Wylder's the only one that does. So, I also mentioned that he's the closest thing we have to a protagonist in this game. When you open up the game and you play through the opening tutorial, you play as Wylder. By default, people will play him because he's the one that they really learned with. He's the one that they start out with. He's also in the cover art of the game. And he sits in this really cool pose while the rain is beating down on him. He's dying in that rain, by the way. It's in the name of the game, Night Rain. But you can see around him that the Duchess and Guardian, my boy, is dying around him. And instead of saving them, he kind of strikes a really cool pose. But he's dying too. And it's really cool. But he's the central focus of the cover art. That's the protagonist. Like, you can't tell me that's not the protagonist of this game. That's protagonist energy. That's John Dark Souls energy. Alright. Let's get to his story. His in-game story that you follow. They're known as a remembrance in-game, so I'll refer to them as a remembrance from now. But in Wylder's remembrance, you learn that him and Duchess are not sisters. That's a guy. Wylder and Duchess are siblings. Duchess is the Wylder sister. Wylder is the Duchess's brother. These two are close. They love each other as siblings, and they don't want to see each other die. Now, they're afraid they're going to see each other die. Wylder's injured, and Duchess, her fate is tied to their goal. Their goal is to kill this guy known as the Night Lord. The Duchess, though, is indirectly tied to the Night Lord. If the Night Lord dies, she will die. Wylder, his whole goal is to kill the Night Lord. Now he's stuck with a moral dilemma. If he kills the Night Lord, his sister dies. He doesn't want to see his sister die. So, when you get to the end of your quest and you go to kill the Night Lord, the ending to Wylder's story is he rebirths himself as a new Night Lord to keep his sister alive, to keep them from succeeding in their goal. He can't let go, and so he sacrifices himself to keep a cycle going. This is exactly what Gwyn, the main antagonist of Dark Souls 1, does to set the whole series in motion. His golden age of fire is running dim, and the first flame that gave him his power is also running dim. So he burns himself to the flame to keep the age going. He cannot let go of his glory days and burns himself to a crisp over it. That's why he's your antagonist, is because of that grand sin that he committed. Wylder, in becoming the Night Lord, becomes your greatest antagonist because he could not let go of his sister. It's perfect. It's a perfect poem. It rhymes so well and fully encapsulates why Wylder is John Dark Souls. because he embodies the story of the game, not just the mechanics, not just the visuals, not just the fire. He embodies the entire meaning of the game, which is learning to let go and the dangers that come from not. It's beautiful. A game about Night Rain, and I've mentioned Dark Souls far more than I've talked about Night Rain. And that's just because the whole topic here is talk about why this guy is John Dark Souls. But I think it means something deeper. Because FromSoft has completely changed the game industry entirely. And Ground Zero was Dark Souls. You could trace back, like, yeah, Demon Souls and Kingsfield. Like, you can see their influences in the games and all. But, Dark Souls is what put FromSoft on the map. Dark Souls was the springboard that launched FromSoft into the stratosphere in terms of potential. All eyes were on FromSoft because of Dark Souls. And because of that, they can't get away from that identity. They can't get away from the Dark Souls guys. And, you know, that kind of sucks, but I understand it. They're running with it. Everything they've learned from Dark Souls, you could see in their later titles, and it all works. This is like one of the most successful companies at the moment. It works. Now, we can talk about what makes Dark Souls all day. But what I want to do here is, Wylder's title as John Dark Souls doesn't all have to be a past thing. Because this is encompassing the DNA of FromSoft themselves, we can use the analysis of Wylder to predict how FromSoft will go in the future. To cast a net ahead to see what we can catch. And there's one thing about Wylder that doesn't fit in with the previous Dark Souls stuff. And that's his grappling hook. He gets a grappling hook that you can grab enemies with, pull them towards you, or if they're too big, pull you towards them. You can also use it to traverse the environment. Grapple a tree or a hill or something, and your character will slide across the ground and you can jump for extra distance. Even his ultimate kind of has that movement-based property. If you use it in the air, you can get extra distance out of it. Not a lot of height, but a lot of extra distance. It feels like you're rocket jumping in Team Fortress 2. It's awesome. But all this movement is completely antithesis to Dark Souls. Dark Souls is a slow, methodical game. But Wylder can move fast. He's quick on his feet. The grapple hook allows him to be the fastest character in the game. He can traverse the environment better than any character because of that grappling hook. This movement tech is not normal. And as far as I can think of, none of the other characters have a movement tech quite like he does. And I think this means that FromSoft is moving to environmental movement. And I'm curious if that's true. The only thing I can think of that really pushes this forward is FromSoft's next game, exclusive to the Nintendo Switch 2, Duskbloods, has this one clip of this guy T-posing, and then he jetpacks away. When I saw this, it looks ridiculous. It looks incredibly low budget to me. But it's environmental traversal. Night Rain has a whole bunch of environmental traversal mechanics added into the game, even though Wylder has more than the other characters. And I think that's reasonable to say is, if Wylder is a reflection of all of FromSoft's past, could it also be a prediction for FromSoft's future? And I'm kind of excited for it. Environmental traversal is a lot of fun in games. Elden Ring, adding the horse, it was amazing to ride around and see the environment. I can see FromSoft taking the grappling hook idea and going further with it, but only time will tell. That's it. I'm done. It is too late. It's really late. I'm ready to go to bed. If you like the video, this isn't game dev related, kinda. I talk about the design of Wylder a whole bunch. Everything I've talked about is technically about a game that was developed, therefore it matches the name. Game dev, friend. Yeah. So, if you like the video, subscribe, and I might have something game dev related next month. Because I have started working on a project. It's not the project I talked about last video, but it is a project. Bye.